Bellator brand is now no longer.
Personally, the Bellator deal was done, and when I seen that, I thought this is going to get messy now. You're taking on a whole other organisation, and then you're going to try and blend it in with the PFL, which is a completely different model, innit? It's a tournament. What a fight this is on paper. That is the toughest fight in the division for Islam, in my opinion, and I'm really looking forward to it.
It could be, because it's so high level, it could be an early contender for Fight of the Year. I know we're only in January and we're kicking off good, but these two lads are absolutely right up there with the best lightweights in the world, no doubt about that. Welcome to Uncaged on the talkSPORT MMA YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe the channel. I'm Arman Tsarukyan. It is a pleasure to be back in your company. Happy New Year to you. I think we're still allowed to say that, even though we're a few days in. And Happy New Year to this man. Smiling because he's happy because he's got himself a moped and a set of flip-flops flying around Thailand, the one and only Mr. Brendan Loughnane. How are you, buddy?
Happy New Year, mate. It's good to be back. It's good to be back chatting MMA and back in my favourite place in the world.
Are you feeling all zen?
Yeah, mate. Chilled out. Love it here. Absolutely love it.
Are you doing much training out there, or are you taking it as a full break?
No, I mean, I'll always train, so I do my training in the morning and then the rest of the day is kind of mine then, rather than the 2-3 strenuous eating strict and all that. None of that right now. So January is just kind of a bit of a relaxed period for me.
Fair enough, mate. And obviously next week, all eyes are going to be on Dubai. Are you going to be in town, or are you still keeping the flip-flops up and hitting that sun lounger?
I'm not sure just yet, Adam, mate, but I would like to go to that show. That is a very, very, very good card, I must say. It's probably the best card they've put on in my eyes. And that main event is it's a very, very good fight. So we'll see what next week brings.
Okay, Mama. I look forward to hopefully seeing you on the ground in Dubai. Did you catch much UFC over the weekend? Obviously, everything returned back at the Apex. I know that the card on paper, when we looked at it, it wasn't necessarily one that jumped off the page with name value, but it didn't half deliver. 14 fights, 7 knockouts, 2 submissions, and a partridge in a pear tree, my man. Knockout of the year contender in there as well. All good.
Every now and then, this Apex really does set on fire, doesn't it? And yeah, when I looked up and down the card, I didn't see much value for it to watch it. I was thinking, oh no, but we've seen the highlights and some good contests. It's a weird one in the Apex, isn't it, Adam? Because you don't get the mad crowds, and you really get to hear what's going on, though, don't you? And you really get to see fighting in its purest form.
Smaller cage, it kind of forces the action a little bit more. But like you said, without the crowds in there, I think a lot of the Apex cards last year, and I know that they're doing less now than they were obviously the years previous, and the reason that they all came in was because of the COVID pandemic. But because the crowd isn't there, I've always felt that you get 10 to 20% less from the fighters. You know, when you're in like that dogfight, the crowd give it a little bit. You know what it's like. You raise your game a little bit, don't you? You know what I mean? Because of the energy that's in the room. And if the energy's not in the room, then I've always felt that that the fights have suffered. Not necessarily the case at the weekend just gone. Maybe people have been off for the holiday season. They've been thirsty for the violence and they've been wanting to take it out on somebody. Well, they absolutely took it out on their opponents at the weekend. Some sensational performances, of which I would thoroughly encourage our viewers to go back and have a little bit of a nosy at the first card of the year. Of course, the main event was a rematch between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. They're now 1-1. Mackenzie Dern getting her first submission in 4 years, which is a great little trinket for her. But also, the manner of the performance I thought was really, really good and propels her forward in this strawweight division. Most amount of divisional submissions, Mackenzie Dern, now in UFC history. We know that we've got a title fight coming up in Feb. She's probably, 2 wins away, 2 good wins away. Maybe against former foes. She's fallen short, hasn't she, against Jessica Andrade, against Yan Xiaonan. Maybe it's one of them next for her, which is a top 5 ranked contender, which will put her in good frame for maybe calling out the winner of Zheng Weili and Tatiana Suarez next month, mate.
I just feel like the women's divisions, it's kind of all over the place, isn't it? It's just like one good win in these divisions. You can be anywhere from number 1 to number 10, and one good win kind of just boosts you straight up there. So yeah, I mean, sensational performance, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
All eyes this week on UFC 311. Obviously, thoughts and prayers with everybody that is currently based in Los Angeles, California, with the wildfires that are going on. I know that the event was under threat at one particular part, with the brand spanking new Intuit Dome being surrounded by everything that's going on out there. But I'm led to believe that they've had some NBA games over the weekend and that we are going to be in Los Angeles on Saturday night for UFC 311. 2 title fights. We've got a brilliant contenders fight in the light heavyweight division. And we've got some hot prospects coming through that I'm pretty confident are going to make big splashes in 2025. But we'll start with the title fights, man, first and foremost. Islam Makhachev is on the cusp of something very, very special. He's taking on Arman Tsarukyan. They've obviously gone at it before, these lads, over 15 minutes, and it was Arman Tsarukyan's UFC debut. We'll digest all that in a minute. But from a record point of view, if Islam Makhachev is successful on Saturday night, he goes out on his own. He overtakes Khabib Nurmagomedov. He overtakes BJ Penn and Benson Henderson with the most amount of lightweight title defenses. That's pretty good going for a guy that's still got quite a few years ahead of him.
I am, I'm so impressed with Islam and the improvements that he's made in his striking and, the composure that he has while he's in the cage now, even in really tough fights with Poirier. Amazing performances there, and he puts it all together so well. Probably better than I've seen anyone in that lightweight division. Huge fan of his. But Tsarukyan taking the first fight on short notice, coming in, looking incredible, taking Islam down, which we've not seen before. And I've seen a recent picture of him at ATT. He looks in the most amazing shape. It's incredible. And you know what picture I'm referring to? Have you seen it?
Mate, whatever diet that is, I want that diet.
I mean, it just shows you can't always just go off aesthetics, but it just shows that he's working hard. And what a fight this is on paper. That is the toughest fight in the division for Islam, in my opinion. And I'm really looking forward to it.
I think both title holders going into UFC 311, I think they're in their toughest fight in their division. Umar for Merab, and I think Arman for Islam. Absolutely, mate. We've got data, obviously, because these guys have gone at it before for 15 minutes, and Islam Makhachev rightfully comes out as the victor in that first fight. I thought that his offensive grappling was very, very good, but I think it's the first time that he's come up against someone that knew how to nullify a lot of that offensive grappling, because I thought the defensive grappling of Arman Tsarukyan was top class. He was 22 at the time, maybe a little bit wet behind the ears, maybe experience cost him in certain exchanges. I think he ran out of gas in the third round. Maybe that's why we're seeing him in incredible shape now, because he knows full well that there's going to be a pace to this particular fight, and it might need the full 25 minutes against Islam Makhachev. How much do you think he's improved, Arman, since that first fight? I know he's had a bump in the road in that brilliant fight against Matthias Gamrot, which was another sensational grapple fest. But how much do you think he's improved since that first knock with Islam?
I really do think he has improved, but I also think Islam's improved. I think we're going to see a much higher level fight than the first time, which is hard because the first one was about as high level as it gets. When you watch two very thinking fighters with incredible grappling, very well rounded as well. I think we're going to see a better version of both men. And what a fight it is on paper. What a fight.
Do you think it goes the full 25?
I'd say, yeah. I'd say it's going to be a 25-minute fight. And like you say, we've seen it multiple times from Islam. That's not a problem. Arman, we're still a bit unsure. But like you say, the recent picture shows he's doing something in the gym. So let's see. If
you can navigate a fight against Charles Oliveira like Arman Tsarukyan did in order to get himself this fight with Islam Makhachev, then obviously you're going in the right direction, aren't you? I think it could be, as Brendan's just been saying there, because it's so high level, it could be an early contender for fight of the year. I know we're only in January and we're kicking off good, but these two lads are absolutely right up there with the best lightweights in the world, no doubt about that. And in the co-main event, it's bantamweights on deck. Merab's in his first title defence after beating Sean O'Malley in the Sphere last year. And he's got a bee in his bonnet with Umar Nurmagomedov, hasn't he? Tell you what, man, press conferences, they're all having a little bit of a chirp. He feels disrespected. Do you think he's a little bit too emotionally involved in the fight?
Yeah, it's quite strange from Merab to see him reacting like this. It's a very competitive fight on paper, but we've discussed it before. We believe Nurmagomedov is just a different level. I've watched him do it all. I've watched him do jumping, turning kicks. I've watched him with incredible grappling and takedowns and takedown defense, and he doesn't really do a lot wrong. And we've seen the style from Merab of multiple takedowns. But I just truly believe it's going to be extremely difficult to do against someone as high level as Umar.
Umar's undefeated through 18 in MMA, right? And he's been in the UFC for 6 fights, again, undefeated through those 6 fights. We a 50-50 finish to decision rate. But the experience is absolutely on Merab's side. He's come through the likes of Cejudo and Aldo, and obviously last time out against Sean O'Malley. So the level of opponent that he's been facing in the UFC is right up there. Corey Sandhagen performance for Umar Nurmagomedov was top class, but that's his main top contender that he has come through. Do you think experience is going to play any factor whatsoever in this fight?
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting point. And it's like when you look at the quality of opponents as well, it's way higher from Merab. But I just feel like Umar's not been given that opportunity to fight these guys for pretty obvious reasons as well. They're avoiding him, like, you know what I mean? They're thinking, if I can get around that fight, I will. Whereas now there's no more ducking Umar. But here's the thing. Just like Dricus, I always write off Merab. I do. So I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to look forward to a good competitive fight.
Umar's trajectory is very similar to the trajectory that we experienced with Khabib, and it's been very similar to the trajectory that we experienced with Islam Makhachev, isn't it? Where we're questioning the level of opponent before they get there. If you look at Islam, for example, who had he really fought up until fighting Charles Oliveira? And everybody was saying, has he got the experience? Has he been at the top level? Well, he walked into the Charles Oliveira fight and smoked Charles Oliveira. And he's got better since becoming champion, hasn't he? And the same could be said about Khabib, who had he really fought up until getting his opportunity for the title. When he got the opportunity, that's when he started to fly. Is it going to be the same case for Umar come Saturday night? Who has he fought up until this point? Well, he's got the champion in front of him, a champion that's on a hot streak right now, and a champion that can ask him some serious questions when it comes to the grappling. If he comes through that, we could have a new star on our hands.
I mean, we've just got to go back and revert to the gym again. They're all in there together. Usman, who's headlining the 25th, Umar, Islam, even the lad I just fought, like all of them are just in this gym together, and I don't get it. Adam, what is in the water? They're just making perfect fighters. They just don't lose. They don't know how to lose. They don't know what losing is. And just watching them seamlessly move around the cage and fight in all areas, it's something that we've never seen before in mixed martial arts from one gym. Extremely dominant, incredibly well-rounded, and very hard to beat.
That's how your main and co-main's looking for UFC 311, 2 title fights. Listen, I'll make a wild prediction. I think it's going to be a long one for the pair of them. Merab's not a finish machine.
Yeah.
Umar has got finishes on his record, but I think it's going to go the full hit. I think that's going to go 25, and I think the main event will go 25 as well. One thing that I don't think is going to go the full hit, and it's only scheduled to be 15 minutes, is the light heavyweights, where Yuri Prochazka and Jamal Hill are going at it. 2 guys that have been champion before, 2 guys that have got similar stories as champion, where they got injured and had to renege the belt, and Alex Pereira stepped in and done the business. They've also got past history with Alex Pereira. Yuri's been there twice with him, stopped twice by Alex Pereira. Jamal came back off injury, got stopped by Alex Pereira. It just seems inevitable that these 2 guys are meeting each other. Yuri has only had 6 UFC fights. He's never been to the judges. So I don't think it's going to start this weekend, if I'm honest, mate. It's you or him. Here we go.
Incredible fight on paper. That's actually surprised me, that stat. You just think Yuri's been in the UFC forever, don't you? Yeah. Like 6 fights in, and as good as he is. I remember when he was training out in Thailand, and that man really is a ninja. He lives like a ninja. Like, the way he lives is insane. He really does live the lifestyle. Very interesting matchup on paper, and I can't wait.
Obviously, Alex Pereira's the guy, isn't he? And he's come in and he's taken the place by storm since moving up from middleweight. We would anticipate that Magomed Ankalaev is going to be his next opponent. But what do you make of the rest of the runners and riders? Obviously, Yuri's in there, Jamal's in there. You've got a couple of guys coming through, like the Carlos Ulbergs of this world. What do you make of that division?
I think it's very similar to the women's division in the sense that one big knockout or one great performance will just propel you. It's kind of just a bit stagnant, isn't it? They all kind of sit around the same. And I just feel like one big performance from anyone, Ankalaev deserves it more than anyone. We've discussed this, haven't we? I mean, he just truly does deserve it more than anyone. He's get it. So I think one big performance from any of the top 5 to 10 just really does put you in a driving seat for a title shot.
Where do you think Jamal Hill's head's at? Because he hasn't won for 2 years since he became champ against Glover Teixeira. He got injured, obviously, had to give the belt up. And then when he came back, he ended up becoming a meme last year, didn't he? Courtesy of Alex Pereira. Where's his head at coming into this fight?
Yeah, tough, long time without a win. And I just feel like it just puts him in a weird position now because, we've seen how devastated he was knocked out by Pereira. 2 years is a long time, and I just feel like it could go either way, this fight. It could be we might see the best version of himself. He's been working behind closed doors and used it as motivation. Or it could be the end of his career. It could be the end. It could be towards the end of the guy that we're seeing flying through the ranks. We'll see.
That's my sleeper for fight of the night because, as I said, the stats just don't lie. Those two guys, from a Jamal Hill point of view, very rarely go to the cards, and Yuri just doesn't. Like I said, he's had 6 fights. He's 4-2 in the UFC. Those 2 defeats coming against Alex Pereira. It's you or him. Do not blink when them two get inside that cage and they shut the door. You mentioned a moment or two ago Dricus du Plessis, and we've had many conversations about Dricus, and not fully, from my point of view anyway. I mean, you're an elite mixed martial artist. From my point of view, I watch his style sometimes and I think, how is that working? But it does. It keeps working and it keeps doing its thing. Another fighter that is featured on this particular card, I watched his UFC debut and I thought, oof, this could be a mess, this. But then he ended up getting the win against Gerald Meerschaert on his debut. And now he's facing Kevin Holland this weekend. I'm talking about Renier de Ridder, who is a submission specialist. Don't get me wrong. You put him in a gi, you put him on a mat, he will tie you up and choke you out, no problem whatsoever. But he looks very rudimentary on the feet. And I think if you can keep fights on the feet against him, you should have your wicked way. However, in the Meerschaert fight, he found a way to take that fight down. Do you think he can do the same to Kevin Holland?
I mean, we've discussed this before. It's some of the worst striking in MMA. Adam, it just is. I'm sorry, I've got to call it for what it is. It's some of the worst I've seen at elite level mixed martial arts. And I feel like if anybody can, he's not a wrestler either. He's just a jiu-jitsu guy. So Kevin Holland should be able to navigate the style and experience. But these guys just find ways, don't they, to get it down. And I know if it does go to the ground, Kevin Holland's in a hell of a lot of problems.
That's how your main card's shaping up. Renato Moicano's on here as well with a wonderful opportunity against Beneil Dariush. Dariush didn't fight at all last year, whereas Renato Moicano was really the man of 2024. 3 fights, 3 wins. Got on the microphone, absolutely rocked it, and he is absolutely hurtling towards the top 5 in this division. So keep an eye on that fight. One other fighter that I just want you to keep an eye on as well for UFC 311 is a guy that I highlighted at the start of last year. Everybody's jumping on his train this year, but I highlighted him last year because I knew that the UFC were big on him, and he didn't disappoint. He had 3 fights, he had 3 wins, and now he's on the big pay-per-view cards. Okay, he's on the prelims, but he's making a nice little run. A fellow by the name of Peyton Talbot, really good striker. Obviously, we want to see more tests for him, but he's taking on Raoni Barcelos at UFC 311, and I think he's going to put on yet another sensational display. Have you been impressed with him, Peyton Talbot?
Oh, mate, absolutely love him. I love his creativity. He does things different. He reminds me of Zabit. Remember Zabit? He gives me the Zabit vibes. Yeah, he does. Gives me Zabit vibes. He's not scared to use different techniques. But I personally think that there will be fighter tonight. Both great fighters. Yeah, both great fighters. Great to watch. And I'm looking forward to that one more than the others for sure.
There you go. Keep an eye on that. Pet Talbot against Ryan Barcelos. UFC 311. Other little bits of news that have been coming our way. We, of course, know that the UFC is going to be hitting London in March 22nd. Everybody's excited about that. And there's loads of rumours flying around regarding certain fights that are being made. You've seen the ones that have been confirmed. The UFC have already announced some of them. We haven't announced that main event as of yet. But you've got to be living under a rock if you've not seen the noise that Leon Edwards and Jacques Della Maddalena is the hot favourite to be the main event for UFC London. Both guys got the same manager, so I think the negotiations might have been straightforward. And it's a fight that I think is very, very fan-friendly. Two lads that are very good on the feet. Obviously, Jack's in a bit of a hot streak at the moment. He's looking to get to the top of the tree. And Leon is looking to get back on the train after falling off against Bilal Muhammad, mate.
Yeah, Jack. I feel like Jack's very underrated. I really do. He's one of them guys that when you watch him, you're like, yeah, you're really good. This could be the fight for Jack, to really show how good he actually is against former world champion Leon. And then you've got Leon on the other side, coming off that loss to Bilal. Looking to remind everyone who he is in this fight. Credible matchup on paper. Very, very tough for both men. Two very, very well-rounded mixed martial artists as well. Guys that do absolutely everything very well. But we're going to go with our hometown boy. We're going to go with our boy, Leon Edwards, to get it done. Get himself back in that title frame and get that belt back.
Well, this is what it's all about. And this is the beautiful thing about martial arts. When you do suffer a bump, I'd like to see how you're going to react. It's nice when everything's going well, isn't it? You know what I mean? We've got, obviously, in the main event at UFC 311, Islam Makhachev's on a 14-fight streak at the moment. Everything's going well. What happens when there is a bump? How does he react to that? Leon was in a similar place. He was on a massive streak. He's now had a bump in front of his home crowd. He's lost his belt. Listen, he'll be licking his wounds. How does he react to the defeat to Bilal Muhammad? This is a big, big fight because he's taking on a lad that's on a hot streak, undefeated, coming through, big aspirations. It's not a gimme. It's not one of them, like in boxing, when you've got that defeat, you step into, I'll take on a couple of doormen and then we'll get back into the proper stuff. This is the proper stuff straight away. So let's see what he's all about. He's in front of his home crowd. It's the big show once again. It'll be a full 25-minute scheduled fight against the kid that wants to obviously take that throne. And what an opportunity for Jack Della. Taking on the former champion. If he beats him, mate, he's one fight away then from maybe fighting Bilal and Shavkat winner.
I mean, look at that division now. You've got Ian Gary, sleeper. You've got Shavkat. You've got these two just knocking around the top 5. Very, very tough division, this one. This is I'd say 155 is the most, the deepest division, but this 170 title picture now, it's just about as deep as it gets right now. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how Leon comes back.
Mate, don't forget, Carlos Prates is on the march from the Fighting Nerds gym in Brazil. I think he's set for a big 2025, isn't he? Other little rumours for UFC London. I know these aren't official as of yet, but rumours are that Nathaniel Wood is going to be taking on Morgan Charrier, the Frenchman. That just basically should come with a certificate, an 18 certificate, mate. You know what I mean? Don't let your kids watch that because that is going to be just pure violence.
Oh, yeah. 2 absolute bangers. We love Nathaniel Wood. Not scared to throw down. But this Morgan, man, he's coming through. He's coming through strong and he's looking great. Wow, what a fight.
Should be good. That's should be scheduled for UFC London. Did you see Justin Gaethje on his social media insinuating that UFC, I think it's 313 at the start of March, that Gaethje is anticipating his next opponent to be Dan Hooker?
More violence than Adam. Is that what we're saying? More violence. Violence only. Wow, what a fight that is. What a fight that is. I hope it materialises because insane fight.
How good has the resurgence of Dan Hooker been? He genuinely, when he stepped onto Fight Island during those COVID times, and all these things have to be taken into consideration for some of these fighters because we forget that during COVID, people couldn't train. There was flight restrictions, especially in Australia and New Zealand, where Dan's based. Very difficult for him to get the work in, but he obviously still needed to work in order to get paid. So therefore, taking fights on places like Fight Island on short notice without having adequate training So he takes a fight with Michael Chandler, Michael Chandler's debut, of course. He ends up getting knocked out. And then the downward spiral, floating between weights, trying to find himself, was quite a difficult watch from a guy that was really doing well at 155. He floats between weights. But the last 3 fights, mate, Dan Hooker just feels like he's back. And he's back to his best.
He's just a really hard man, isn't he? He's a really hard human being. Like some of the fights I've seen him in, the Poirier fight, and he's just not an ounce of quitting him, is there? He's just different gravy, and I think when you go through these hard fights earlier in your career, if you can weather them, yeah, you win some, you lose some. Just makes you kind of bulletproof. It just gets you ready for these tough fights, and I feel like he's had that many hours in the octagon now. I know he's a very experienced fighter. I think it's all coming to fruition for Dan Hooker, and I'm just such a fan of his style.
Yeah, I think everybody is a huge fan of his style. I was there for his fight against Jalen Turner, and he fought the last 2 rounds, so the last 10 minutes with a broken arm.
Nuts.
And won. Just cracked on.
Yeah, he's nuts.
Special human being. Other bits of news that you may have caught up on. I think this was first reported by Ariel Helwani that the Bellator brand is now no longer. Obviously, PFL, Bellator, it's all been confusing. I think I've spoken about this on several occasions, that it's all been confusing, especially for fight fans. What is it? What is the product? What are they pushing forward? Of course, I've been a big fan of the tournament, which this man won in 2022. Been a big fan of the European legs, where a lot of stars are starting to now shine. The likes of Cedric Doumbé has really done well there, hasn't he? And captured the imagination of people over in France. But then this hybrid Bellator thing just hanging over the top didn't really make too much sense to me, and I'm sure it didn't make too much sense to the fans. So there's going to be a lot of questions, and no doubt, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of them next week when we're in Dubai for Usman Nurmagomedov against Paul Hughes. What happens to the Bellator champions? Are they still champion? Are the PFL champions going to be champion? What's the situations there? It was a mess, Brendan. I don't know what it was like for you being on the inside connected to the PFL. It was a mess that absolutely needs to be sorted out and streamlined, and therefore made to be easier to understand for fight fans.
Well, it's just, the thing is, right, personally, the Bellator deal was done. And when I seen that, I thought, this is going to get messy now, because you're taking on a whole other organisation, and then you're going to try and blend it in with the PFL, which is a completely different model, innit? It's a tournament. So you've got a running organisation, then you've got a tournament, and now you've got to merge them. And they're doing the best job that they possibly can. But, we've seen a lot of fighters coming out and complaining about activity and things like that. Personally, you guys said earlier, I wasn't aware of it, that this is the last Bellator card, I believe you said. So if that's the case, I think that's a great move. I think it all just needs to be under one. All needs to be merged under one banner. Having champions versus champions. I even like the fact that you win the tournament. You're not the champion. You're just in line to be the next contender for the actual belt. But we're talking about whispers here at the minute. We don't know 100% about any of this. But difficult thing to do. They're doing the best that they possibly can. I've seen a lot of fighters complaining about activity. But I've just got to tell you from a personal experience, I got nothing but activity. I got just crazy activity non-stop. So, it's a difficult one, but it'd be interesting to see how it all clears up.
And on top of that, they then in the same week have the announcement that the prize pot for the PFL tournaments is down from $1 million to 500K. Listen, I get it. It's business. You've got to streamline. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly. But when you are going backwards rather than going forwards, it isn't a good look, and it does become less appealing for fighters. Not necessarily fighters on the outside looking for an opportunity, maybe fighters on the inside. People that have already been through the tournament situation, people that have already won the tournament situation and bagged themselves $1 million. Are they going to go through the same processes for half that amount of money? It's going to be interesting to see who signs up for the tournament this year.
Yeah, we've heard so many different things now about how it's changed, and you just got to think, Adam, right? You're giving out $6 million in one night every year. it's a lot of money to hand away, innit? It's a lot of money to pass over. And it was, the big appeal, the marketing behind having 1 million in one night is very important for the brand, and it'd be interesting to see now that it's 500 how it will affect it.
Yeah, and who's going to be involved in those tournament formats? We don't know the weight categories as of yet. When we do, we'll pass them on to you. Whilst we're still speaking about PFL/Bellator and that franchise, we do have a monster fight coming up next week, Dubai. It is Usman Nurmagomedov and it is Paul Hughes. Paul Hughes absolutely caught all our imagination. I mean, he's been catching it for a bit, especially through his time with Cage Warriors. He makes the decision to go with the PFL/Bellator. He takes a fight with AJ McKee, who's an elite fighter, and Paul Hughes was magnificent that night. And stuck his head above the parapet, got on the microphone, and called out Usman Nurmagomedov. He chased Usman Nurmagomedov down. He said, "Listen, man, I want to rock and roll. Let's do it in Dubai." So here we are. He asked, he's received, he's got a hell of a fight on his hands because Usman is the real deal.
I mean, I'm going to throw it out there. Usman could be the best 55er on the planet. Like, when I watch his style, wow. Another guy that just puts it all together beautifully. Does everything very well. Paul Hughes, young and hungry, exciting fighter. Looked great against AJ. Shown that he can negate wrestling. But can he negate Usman Nurmagomedov's wrestling? That's a whole different ball game and a whole different story. And we will see.
We will see. And we'll get you closer to the action next week. I'll be in Dubai myself, interviewing the likes of Paul Hughes and everybody connected to the PFL. And listen, the card's really, really good, as Brendan said right at the start of the show. Lots of Irish fighters on there. So we'll stick microphones in people's faces and get you closer to the action. A little bit of news over the last 24 hours. We're told that Holly Holm, former champion, is parting ways with the UFC. She wants to explore other things. She still had 2 fights left on a deal, but she wants to go and explore some other things. And the UFC have gone, "Go, do you know something, Holly? Yeah, sweet. Go on then. Crack on. Do what you need to do." Do you think she might step back into the world of boxing? Obviously, a former world boxing champion. There's a few quid in that boxing game right now, isn't there?
Yeah, all seems to be happening over there. And I think it was nice of the UFC to let her go with 2 fights on a deal. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like a nice mutual decision all around. Always been a Holly Holm fan. Legend of the sport. I remember my first time I won a lot of money on gambling was when she fought Ronda Rousey, and she was a 12-1 underdog.
Wow.
12-1. 12-1 in a 50-50 fight. So, yeah, Holly, I've always been a fan of her style. Perfect technique on the striking, and best of luck to her. Hats off.
Absolutely. Do you think Conor McGregor's going to maybe make a career in football? Have you seen his social media posts?
Why is he so funny, Adam? Why is everything he does just hilarious?
He stepped into the world of, I think he was playing, if I'm not mistaken, and Conor, if you're watching this and I've got this wrong, I apologise. But I think he was, obviously he has a restaurant, doesn't he? Restaurant, public house in Dublin. And I think they have a football team. Now, he, I think, was representing them in some Sunday league game or whatever it may be on the weekend. And he put his highlights up on social media. People have obviously been at the game and seen that Conor's playing and filmed bits of it and stuck it up on social media. Now, what I expected to see, do you know, if you're going to do like a football highlight reel, I expected him to maybe be dribbling and going past a few people, crossing one in, maybe smashing in a free kick, taking a penalty, all those types of things. No, his highlight reel is basically going through people. That's it. So just, if there's a tackle there, McGregor's there, straight through. You know, you can take the MMA out of the kid, or you can take him out of MMA, but you can't take the MMA out of the kid.
I expected absolutely nothing less, Adam, from that highlight reel, like straight through everyone. Joe, I've seen another clip of him before this playing football. He does look like he can do a bit, but this guy is an absolute. He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Anything he does, we will tune in, won't we, Adam?
He's, like you said, box office. Did you see the incident with Khabib on the plane this week, where his trip to Los Angeles was delayed?
I still don't quite understand it. Can you talk me through it?
I don't understand it myself. So basically, according to Khabib, he boarded a plane in order to obviously meet up with the team, Islam Makhachev and Umar Nurmagomedov with their title fights that we've been speaking about for UFC 311. He was seated next to the wing near the emergency exit. And then he got into a conversation with the flight attendant about, obviously, the duties that you have. Everybody's been in that situation. You've all seen it.
Yep.
You get on a plane and they ask you, are you capable of helping us if there's an emergency and all this type of stuff? Now, if anybody's ever met Khabib Nurmagomedov, I'll tell you firsthand, right? The fella's English is really, really good. He understands English really, really good. He's a very polite man. And if there's anybody that I would want alongside me in a state of emergency, it might be Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's a pretty switched on dude. So for the reaction for him to be, in his words, deplaned off the back of this conversation with the flight attendant is very, very concerning. Not a good look at all for that flight company. I don't think they will be getting used again by Team Nurmagomedov, or in fact, after him posting it on social media, I think maybe a couple of flight sales will go down as well. Customer service didn't seem to be at its very, very best, but the good news is that Khabib did manage to board a plane about an hour later and get himself down to LA. Just not a good look for that flight company, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I caught the video, but I couldn't really understand what was going on. But yeah, he does seem like a very down-to-earth, cool guy, so I can't really see. I mean, we've all been in that position where, like you say, you've been at the exit, and it's will you save everyone's life basically if we're going down. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, it's a bit of a responsibility to take on, but I did see the video, and it just seems like it's all been cleared up now. So Khabib seems like a top fella, mate. He really does. That whole team do, and I just feel like that must have been blown out of proportion. What's going on there?
And that concludes our first show of 2025. Thank you very much for tuning in to us. Much appreciated. Don't forget to tune into the fights this weekend, UFC 311. It's going to be an epic show. We'll be back next week for a little bit of a debrief on that, and then we'll be heading towards Nurmagomedov versus Hughes in Dubai, which we'll get you closer to throughout the course of the week. Make sure you like and subscribe to talkSPORT MMA YouTube channel. Loads of content coming your way throughout the course of the year. We'll catch you next time.